Chapter 56, Kidnapped. She woke with a start. The house was incredibly dark, so dark that Flora wondered if she had gone temporarily blind. Ulysses, she said. She sat up and stared in the direction of the door. Slowly, the rectangular outline of it appeared, and then she could see that it was ajar. Ulysses, she said again. She got out of bed and went down the darkened stairs and past the little shepherdess. You stupid lamp, she said. She made her way into the kitchen. It was empty. The typewriter was unmanned or unsquirreled. Ulysses, said Flora. She walked over to the typewriter and saw a piece of paper glowing white in the dim light. Uh-oh, she said. She leaned in close. Dear Flora, I am terribly fond of you, but I hear the call of the wild, and I must return to my natural habitat. Thank you for the macaroni and cheese. Yours, Mr. Squirrel. Mr. Squirrel? Call of the wild? Terribly fond? It was the biggest lie that Flora had ever read in her life. It didn't look like Ulysses had written it at all. Only at the very end did the truth appear. 2 letters, F and L. That was Ulysses, she knew, trying to type her name one last time, trying to tell her that he loved her. I love you too, she whispered to the paper. And then she looked around the kitchen. What kind of cynic was she, whispering, I love you, to a squirrel who wasn't even there? But she did love him. She loved his whiskers. She loved his words. She loved his happiness, his little head, his determined heart, and his nutty breath. She loved how beautiful he looked when he flew. She felt her heart seize up. Oh, why hadn't she told him that? She should have said those words to him. But that didn't matter now. What mattered was finding him. Flora hadn't been reading The Criminal Element for 2 solid years for nothing. She knew what was going on. The squirrel had been kidnapped by her mother. She took a deep breath. She considered what to do, what action to take. In the event of a true and genuine emergency, an absolute and undeniable crime, the authorities must be notified immediately, said the Criminal Element. Flora was certain that this was a true and genuine emergency, an absolute and undeniable crime. Still, it didn't seem like a good idea to notify the authorities. If she called the police, what would she say? My mother kidnapped my squirrel? The Criminal Element also said, if for some reason the authorities are not accessible to you, then you must seek help in other quarters. Who do you trust? Whom do you know to be a safe port in the storm? Flora suddenly remembered her dream, how warm William Spiver's hand had felt in her own. She blushed. Whom did she trust? Oh, good grief. She trusted William Spiver. Chapter 57, Tootie to the Rescue. It was 2 a.m. The grass was heavy with dew. Flora was picking her way through the darkness. She was breathing heavily because she was carrying Mary Ann in her arms. And Mary Ann, for all her pink cheeks and delicate features and excessive stupid frilliness, was incredibly heavy. Do you remember who Mary Ann is, right? The lamp. Talk about stout, thought Flora. The Criminal Element also said, can one reason with a criminal? This is debatable, but it is true that the rules of nursery school are often in good effect in the criminal world. What do we mean by this? We mean that if a criminal has something you want, then you must take something he wants. Only then is it possible for some kind of discussion to begin. There was nothing and no one that Flora's mother loved more than the lamp. Together, Flora and William Spiver would find her mother. They would offer to exchange the little shepherdess for the squirrel, and then all would be well, or something. That was Flora's plan. And first, she had to find William Spiver, and she didn't think it would be a good idea to ring Tootie's doorbell at 2:20 a.m. William Spiver, said Flora. Here she was, standing in the dark, holding an unlit lamp and hoping that a temporarily blind boy would hear her call his name and come help her rescue with her squirrel. A squirrel who, for a superhero, sure did seem in need a lot of rescuing. Things were pretty grim. William Spiver, she said again. William Spiver. And then, without really intending to, she started saying William Spiver's name over and over and louder and louder. William Spiver, William Spiver, William Spiver, William Spiver, William Spiver! There was no way he would be able to hear her, of course. She knew that. But she just couldn't make herself stop. She just idiotically, hopefully kept saying his name. Flora Bell. William Spiver, William Spiver, William Spiver. Flora Bell. William Spiver, William Spiver, William Spiver. Flora Bell! And there he was, standing at a darkened window, conjured apparently by her need and her desperation and her words, William Spiver. Or at least the shadow of William Spiver. Oh, said Flora. Hello. Yes, hello to you too, said William Spiver. How lovely of you to visit me in the middle of the night. There's been an emergency, said Flora. Right, said William Spiver. Let me just put on my bathrobe. Flora felt a familiar prick of irritation. It's an emergency, William Spiver. There's no time to waste. Forget about your bathrobe. I'll just put on my bathrobe, said William Spiver, as if she hadn't said anything at all. And I'll be right there. Wherever there is. It is shockingly difficult to locate even the most obvious things when one is temporarily blind. The world is very hard to navigate when you can't see. Although, to be perfectly frank, I had trouble navigating the world even before the advent of blindness. I've never been what you would call coordinated or spatially intelligent. It's not even that I bump into things. It's more like things leap out of nowhere and bump into me. My mother says that this is because I live in my head as opposed to living in the real world. But I ask you, don't we all live in our heads? Where else could we possibly exist? Our brains are the universe. Don't you think that's true, Florabelle? I said it's an emergency. Okay, well then I'll just put on my bathrobe and we'll sort it all out. Flora put Mary Ann down on the ground and she looked about wildly in the darkness. What was she looking for? She didn't know. Maybe a stick that she could use to hit William Spiver over the head? Florabelle? Ulysses is gone, she screamed. My mother kidnapped him. I think my mother is possessed. I think she might hurt him. Do not cry, she told herself. Do not cry, do not hope, do not cry, just observe. Shh, said William Spiver. It's okay, Florabelle. I'll help you. We'll find him. And then the light in William Spiver's room came on and Tootie said, What in the world are you doing, William? Looking for my bathrobe. Tootie to the rescue. The words appeared above Tootie's head in a neon kind of brightness. Tootie, shouted Flora. It's an emergency. My mother has kidnapped the squirrel. Flora, said Tootie. She stuck her wet head out the window. Why do you have that awful lamp? It's complicated, said Flora. Again with the lamp, said William Spiver. What in the world is the meaning of that lamp? My mother loves the lamp, said Flora. I'm holding it hostage. Desperate times call for desperate measures, said Tootie. That's right, said Flora. It's an emergency. I'll just get my purse, said Tootie.